Content warning. Cursing. The dream.
So my name is Michael, and we sit in our apartment on a snowy day in Halifax. And my dream last night was about me and my girlfriend hiking in, I don't know, it was probably Germany, because it was a mountainous area, but also flatland right next to it. And we went up the mountain, up until we reached the clouds, and then we went on top of the clouds and went on a journey with the clouds. So we were about like 30,000 feet high or so, and the feeling we had on the clouds was really cautious, because every single mistake seemed to be really dangerous, so we would fall down if we take a false step. But we could move on those clouds, so we were standing up and looking down, and it was really scary because it was so high. But on the other side, someone told us that it was okay, and I feel like I had the instructions. I got the instructions before how to behave on the clouds. So I tried out to sit into one of the poofy clouds where I was basically sitting in a beanbag chair, and it was really comfy, and that was the moment where I felt really safe. But then my girlfriend came over and did one of the mistakes, so my one leg fell through the cloud and was hanging in the air, and that was really super scary, just because my foot was just dangling there, and was like, whoa, watch out, like we can't fall down here. And then we were like, well, but what if like we want to go down? The clouds just took us away from the mountains, right? So we didn't really know how to get back down. And I was like, yeah, well, there's one technique how we can get back down. We just really have to engage our upper body and lift up our chest and spread our arms like wings to fly back down and land on the mountains. And that's what we did. And we did it just because we knew how to do it, and like how we have to engage our bodies. And then we flew down to the mountains and landed soft and sound.
What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? So, Michael's dream. Well, there are a lot of images and symbols in here, I feel like. You know, we got going on a hike with someone. That feels like, at one point he even used the word journey.
Mm-hmm.
Climbing mountains. Just clouds, generally. And also specifically being on top of clouds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all very... Yeah, people... saying somebody is in the clouds, like somebody has their head in the clouds, like you climb the mountain so far you're in the clouds. I just feel like that's very a common way to describe someone who's in like dreamland, right?
Right. Yes. So how does the whole like having these techniques, like there was this whole part of the dream that felt not so general or not so symbolic, or I guess it's symbolic of something, but like the idea that he has like this instruction manual and these like very specific and sometimes like in all physical ways that he's supposed to be, that they're both supposed to be behaving in order to achieve this thing. You know, that, what is that?
Yeah, I feel like this is perhaps Michael's approach to relationships.
Oh.
Where he has like, maybe he has certain ideas about how to make things work.
Right.
That are like, standardized.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess anything that's really uncertain, I feel like when things become really ambiguous, often that's when that's when the human mind really goes looking for, like, certainty and specificity and, like, trying to pin things down to, like, very technical right and wrong ways of doing. because it's so stressful to be in, you know, cloudy, the clouds.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like in this totally, you can't, you know, if you're on a cloud, you can't tell where you're supposed to, where your good footing is, or, you know, you can't tell what's below you. It's all fluffy and vague. And so it's like, he said that the feeling they had up there was cautious. Like they're in this magical landscape, but all they're feeling is like nervous because they don't know when they could step wrong.
Yeah.
So it definitely makes sense in that type of circumstance, you lean back on like any kind of solid rules anybody's given you about how to behave, because it's totally dangerous territory, and having something to reflect on to help you make the right choices is, you know, I get wanting that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, it's interesting because it's dangerous territory, but also very idyllic, you know, because it's not like they were descending into a scary cave that was full of monsters. Like, they're doing this thing that's really beautiful, and, you know, it sounded like it had the potential to be very nice. Like, the moment where he talked about it being like being on a beanbag chair, he said he was very comfy, and at that moment he felt safe and calm. So there are the potential of these rewards in this situation, and it's something that it sounds like they chose to do. Like, it's a recreational thing. They're like going for a hike.
Did you notice how he was comfortable in that beanbag, and he felt comfortable and safe, and he was enjoying this magical landscape that they were in, and that it was his girlfriend's mistake that destabilized him?
Yeah.
That was a very specific, I noticed that.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I noticed that because as I was listening, I was like, okay, so she took a wrong step, but then it was his leg that fell through.
Yeah, I know. It was like, kind of confusing.
It's more convoluted than like, oh, somebody makes a mistake and it's them who gets the consequences, which feels, you know, real in a lot of situations in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's like you, at first you'd assume that the rules were like, well, if you step with your feet flat, or if you step on the areas that are light and not dark, like, then you'll be fine. But then it seems like they're like, if you take a slight left turn and then look over your shoulder and step with your toes first, then your partner's leg will fall through a hole. Like, it just feels like that's maybe the type of rule that was in place.
Yeah. Which is, I find that really interesting because it seems at first totally absurd, but then when I think about it in the context of just how reality does work, that is how consequences are most of the time. Like, you know, it's actually rare that something has such a direct consequence that you do it and right away you're like, oh, that's why it's bad, or oh, that's why it's good. It's like a lot of the things you have to like arrange your mind around being like, okay, if I do this and this and this, then it's going to have these implications for these people, or for myself, but like a year from now or whatever, you know, it's like,
it's true.
Things just, everything is more complicated than the thing of like, you stub your toe and it hurts and you're like, oh, I shouldn't stub my toe.
Yeah. What do you think about their way to get down?
It reminds me of, and I get, this isn't quite baseless, but I know that both of them do some circuits arts stuff. And so to me, that was partly just a bringing in, like, whenever I have very minimally done any kind of things that are like partner acro, like yoga-y things, so often it's like these subtle techniques that you have to remember in order to get your balance, or in order to have the move work in any way versus be a total failure. It's like, oh, you just have to like hold your core, you know, in this particular way, and then suddenly you're going to stop shaking and it'll be possible to do the thing. Whereas if you don't know that like little tiny detail, then it just seems impossible.
Yeah.
So it reminded me of that. But in terms of meaning, I guess the one thing is that it's like, it removes all the danger. Like, as long as you know how to get yourself down, all of those like moments of it being really scary are kind of like, they didn't need to be scary.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're right. Because as soon as they're like, because I definitely know what you're talking about this like certain types of activities where like holding and like putting your shoulder blades together, or like, like pulling your belly button in towards your back or whatever will like make all of the difference between whether something's feels right or wrong or is possible or not. And like, and it's like the difference is like a tiny amount of attention.
I guess like all of yoga sort of feels like that. Yeah. Really.
And then the difference for him here is like you feel destabilized, like every small mistake can have this like ripple of bizarre negative effects. But then if you just like turn this like small amount of attention on it, like that fear loses its power.
Yeah, I guess it's a mindfulness thing, sort of. It's like both mindfulness and knowing where to place your mindfulness. You know, because you do need these techniques. You do need to know what it is that you're supposed to be focusing on. But it did sound like after that, it's sort of just about like relaxing into that thing.
But then like overall, looking at the dream as a whole, I do feel like it is him preparing himself for being let down.
Yeah.
Like you're going up on this adventure. You're going into this cloud landscape, exciting, high up, cool place. And all you're thinking about is like, you're up here, like you're, going on this journey.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, fuck, it could end. And then you're like, how do I get down? And like, it's a testament maybe to his ability to like navigate himself through challenging situations, that like the way the dreams end is he's like, oh, well, I just know I have to do this and then I'll be fine. Like, that's good. But I do feel like the overall thing is like something, like there's like some big change, or there's like something very disappointing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like there's a really actual physical arc to the storyline of the dream. Like you start on the ground, you have to climb a mountain to get up. It's hard, but you like are doing this for fun because you want to. And then you get to this next level where it's like you're way up high. Things are like tricky, but also you're like focusing really hard on making it work. There are moments of reward. Yeah. And then you just actually descend back to earth. And, I mean, in thinking about arcs of relationships, it is like that really rings true for me and how it feels. Like you build something slowly through hard work, like you're moving up. Each step is like a deliberate step forward when you're forming well, not necessarily deliberate. Sometimes it feels less than that, but like, it's like you're like working towards something and you're putting effort into it and it's taking energy. And then there's all of the nebulous things of continuing to try and make it work once you've made it to the level of it like being a thing. And then like when something ends, it's like, it's really terrifying before it does end. But then once that like momentum has started and it's ending, you just have to
hold yourself up. And
you have to get yourself through it, and it's fine. And it like generally kind of like, I mean, not always. Again, these things go a lot of different ways, but like there's the potential for it to be something where you're not putting as much like step by step. There isn't as much of a step by step feeling to it. It's just kind of like you just have to ride it down,
Yeah. Like experiencing that change.
Yeah.
And riding out your feelings.
Yeah. Until you touch ground again and you can start walking. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Help us keep making this by subscribing to and reviewing the podcast wherever you listen to it, and following and liking us on social media.
If you love this, you can support us on Patreon.
We will reward you.